Hello World Wide Web, I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality of the best hair. And with the 5th Scream movie just days away, assuming I've managed to fight off the automated copyright claim by now, it's time to look at Scream 2. Released in 1997, just 1 year after the original, Scream 2 is what happens when you wind up with a smash hit slasher flick on your hands. Get the cast back together, make more movie, and make more money. With a bit of a twist, of course, this time around the Scream franchise goes to areas most slasher flicks dare not attempt. They actually brought Wes Craven back to direct the sequel. As such, Scream 2 follows the events of Scream, where Sidney Prescott is no longer a high school student, but a college student. Gale is a sensation, Dewey is suffering chronic pain, and the whole world knows about the events of Scream because they made a movie about it. However, in this series where horror movies become horror realities, suddenly people around Sidney begin getting picked off one by one in classic slasher fashion. That's right, it's a sequel! Which is exactly what anyone lining up to watch Scream 2 was looking for, so let's take a look at Scream 2 and maybe even Scream 2. We open up to an early showing of Stab, the movie based on the book, based on the events of the last movie, as we see a couple getting ready for the show. Phil, played by Omar Epps, and his girlfriend Maureen, played by Jada Pinkett Smith. Though she's not the biggest fan of slasher flicks.
It's a dumbass white movie about some dumbass white girls getting their white asses cut the fuck up.
Based on true dumbass white events. Besides, horror isn't exactly known for its fair treatment of characters with a higher melanin pigmentation. Still, he's got the tickets for free, and damn if he ain't gonna enjoy a free show. They're even giving out free ghostfaced costumes. That way everyone can rambunctiously pretend to be psycho murderers as they enjoy the movie. Opening up, much like Scream did, but with Casey played not by Drew Barrymore, but Heather Graham, and Stab being directed by Robert Rodriguez. Anyway, just like the real events, Casey takes a shower.
And why she gotta be naked? What does that have to do with the plot of the story, her being butt-ass naked?
Well, in horror, nudity is linked to vulnerability. The more vulnerable a character appears, the scarier the killer becomes. That and tits and faces get asses in seats. But her shower is interrupted from a call by the voice.
Were you expecting somebody?
No. Bitch, hang the phone up and star 69 his ass. Damn.
That's your takeaway, Maureen? I'm more concerned with the fact that she evidently put Jiffy Pop on the stove and then decided to go take a shower. Anyway, she's already getting kind of scared and takes a break to get some concessions, so the movie can explain to us that this movie really happened. People really died. You know, for those of you out there who skipped Scream 1, but on her way back.
I'm sorry, I had to, baby.
You look a little on edge, and we all know in this genre, jump scares are what friends are for. She's not happy, but no bother, they can just finish watching the movie and try to enjoy themselves. First things first though, Phil's gotta go pee. But from the other stall, he hears something. Okay, first of all, if you gotta pee that bad, just do it and get out of there. Second, with how low volume that sound is, arguably pressing your ear against the stall will make it harder to hear it. But if he didn't do that, then he couldn't get stabbed through the head by Ghostface in the other stall. Thus, with Phil, the body count has started. However, a man in Phil's jacket and the Ghostface mask returns to Maureen, just in time for them to watch Casey be brutally stabbed to death in Stab. Oh yeah, that's right, I don't remember my man being covered in blood like that, because this is Ghostface, and he stabs Maureen right there in the crowded theater. Problem is, with all these theatrics going on, people watching just assume this brutal homicide is all part of the show. I mean, at least up until this happens. Hats off to Wes for giving us another opening to a slasher flick that isn't quick and clean and pretty, and also for Jada for pulling off horrifying death quite so convincingly. That out of the way, it's time to get back to Sidney Prescott, like always played by Neve Campbell. She awakens to a creepy voice on the phone, but that's no bother, she's got the power of caller ID, scaring the crap out of them far more than they manage to frighten her. Since most of her friends died last movie, she's got a new one. Hallie, played by Elise Neal. The thing that does bother Sidney is that Cotton Weary is getting tons of airtime, played by Lev Schreiber. Yeah, he was innocent, but that's still a very dark period of Sidney's life, and she doesn't need a constant reminder. But it's either that or I go to this freaky cult party with Hallie.
You know me in organized religion. It's a sorority. Worse.
Oh yeah, you do have the weird pledges, the hazing, the total loyalty to these idiots who have no idea what the hell they're doing in the Greek alphabet. But free beer? Talks of a possible party night. We'll have to wait, though. News has come that 2 college students were murdered. Thus, Sidney knows just who to call. Our resident horror movie geek, Randy. Jamie Kennedy is joined by another horror geek in his film theory class, though. Mickey, played by Timothy Olyphant. Today's topic, how clear it is that people really kill each other after being influenced by violent entertainment.
You can't blame real-life violence on entertainment.
What? Wait a second. Yes, you can. Don't you even watch the news?
Yeah, that was a big thing on the news all over the 90s. Violent movies create real violence. Violent games turns your children into murderers. All claims made with fucking nothing to back them up. There weren't any studies on the subject, but, today, there are lots of studies. There was a lot of money spent trying to figure out exactly if this was the case. You know what they found? No correlation, except sometimes a possible correlation that violent media helps reduce real-world violence. There is the odd study that breaks every rule of how to get a reliable result that says, ha, see, it does cause real violence, get rid of them. The real debate between Randy and Mickey is why bother making a real-life sequel of the real-life scary movie? Randy says that sequels are inherently inferior, but Mickey posits that there have been plenty of sequels that were better than the original.
Name one.
Yeah. Aliens. Far better than the first.
Yeah, well, there's no accounting for taste.
Thank you, Ridley Scott rules.
Maybe it's all the social media finally getting to me, but I'm having a very hard time believing this kind of conversation can happen without screaming vulgarity and the odd attempt to get someone fired from their job. But when Sidney shows up, Randy knows she needs his expertise.
It's starting again, Randy.
It's not. A lot of shit happens at the movies. People get robbed, shot, maimed, murdered. Multiplex is just a very dangerous place to be these days.
Which he does not offer up, but instead begins speaking in an English accent. Completely out of random. He never did that before. And he never does it again. And they never explain it, so, I don't know. Yeah, Randy would rather just pretend like nothing is going on and not end up in another horror movie. But before long, Sidney's new boyfriend shows up. Derek, played by Jerry O'Connell, whom I mostly knew in the 90s as Quinn Mallory from Sliders.
Is there anything I can do?
Well, you got any tricks for getting me back to a pseudo-quasi-happy existence?
You know, I might just have one for that.
Knowing his luck, they will successfully get out of the slasher movie world, only to end up in the kaiju dimension. Unfortunately, the best Derek can pull off is a kiss, so we're stuck in horror world. Not bad for Gale Weathers. New bodies means new books and new money. Also a new cameraman, Joel, played by Dwayne Martin. And less welcome new admirers, such as Debbie Salt, played by Laurie Metcalf. She's a writer and reporter too, but Gale
Your flattering remarks are both desperate and obvious.
is a bit too busy to deal with this kind of bullshit right now. Come on, we got murders on hand. Get the presses hot before the bodies get cold. But while she gets what she can from the chief, who would Sidney happen to spy hobbling around but Dewey? He heard about what's going on and flew down there as soon as he could. He's got important things to tell her.
If there is some freaked out psycho trying to follow in Billy Loomis's footsteps, you probably already know him. Or her. Or them.
The suspect is within your circle of friends, and Dewey doesn't discriminate. She figured as much, but still, Dewey's gonna stick around and keep things safe as best he can. As he goes off to chat it up with the chief, Gale shows up. Not only that, surprise, here's Cotton Weary, ready for an interview, because you look like you could use an interview. In response, Sidney slaps Gale across the face, which was just as surprising to Cotton, who was not informed that Sidney didn't know about this.
Don't walk away from me, Gale. Gale, I did my part.
And while Cotton was in a little throwaway shot in the first movie, they do spend a lot of time actually fleshing him out this time around, and I really like his characterization. Although it's a lot harder to believe that anyone thought he could possibly be guilty of anything when he's so awkward and non-threatening, even with the spooky music. Speaking of awkward, Gale runs right into Dewey. Remember how she used his crush on her to manipulate him last time? Well, after she wrote that tell-all book about what happened, that kind of put a damper on the relationship, especially considering Gale didn't exactly write Dewey in the most flattering manner.
It's a character in a book.
Page 41. Deputy Dewey oozed with inexperience.
Now, to be fair, you did. So yeah, those sparks last movie, consider them officially fizzled out. Dewey is here because he has work to do, and Gale can go fuck right off for all he cares.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some oozing to do.
Okay, I really don't want to imagine all the things that could be. While Dewey's off oozing, we jump on over to the sorority party! Again, Sidney's not the most enthusiastic, but it does mean that that's where most everyone is, except for Sarah Michelle Gellar. She plays Cece of Omega Beta Zeta. As the rest of them are off getting fit-chased, she is the one left behind just in case anyone needs a ride, and is therefore all alone in a big dark house. The perfect place to be attacked by Ghostface! So that she must run up the stairs, which of course eventually run out, and he can catch her, stab her, and kill her!
Never said I was innocent.
Vampires, demons, ancient evils, that's easy, that's simple, but gravity will get you every time. As the body count rises, it's becoming more and more clear that there is a serial killer on the loose once again, which Joel isn't the most excited about.
I was brought here to do an interview, not faces to Death 14.
Look on the bright side, you don't have to worry about trying to frame subjects to keep making sudden movements. Sidney and Derek don't go down to gawk, though. They intend to leave. However, the killer is still around and attacks! Sidney rushes to the back door, and Derek runs in to confront the villain. Dewey does as well, but his limp means that by the time he finds anything, the killer is gone, leaving only Derek. Wounded, but as luck would have it, very safely wounded in a way that will leave absolutely no permanent damage.
You're lucky he didn't kill you.
Yeah, it's awfully convenient.
Say what?
The convenience of that, it's fucking awful. I can think of way more convenient things than getting my arm slashed open. The police still aren't totally convinced they're dealing with a sequel here, though, but Gale has the key. It seems that every single victim thus far just so happened to have a name that is in some way loosely connected to the victims in Woodsboro. Therefore, it's Scream 2, baby! Knowing this, the police have two cops following the main character around at all times, and Sidney is not so keen on her boyfriend keeping her company. Her safety, his safety, either way, this doesn't seem like a good idea. But that whole keep a safe distance to keep us both safe has nothing on youthful hormones and constant film references.
And if you say, hey, go away, I will. But I think better still, I better stick around and love you. Do you think I have a face?
So romantic. Hey, Charlie! I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. Having won over the entire cafeteria, Derek gives his fraternity letters to Sidney in a display of his complete and utter devotion to her no matter what.
That is a big no-no. See, you're not supposed to give your Greek letters to your girl. No shape, way, or form.
Thanks for that. Honestly, all I know about fraternities is alcohol, hazing, and poor life choices. But that's not moving the plot forward, so Randy and Dewey begin to brainstorm over whodunit. Randy being the resident horror movie savant, he brings up the rules of sequels. More gore, more bodies.
And number 3, if you want your sequel to become a franchise, never, ever...
How do we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
Damn it! I guess I'm gonna have to watch every single movie past this one in order to find out what he could have possibly been saying. Moving on to pointing fingers, Randy says that Derek's boyfriend affiliation and conveniently not serious wound puts him at the primary suspect spot. But this is a sequel, and he would hope the horror movie he's in would be a little more creative than that. So there's another option. Hallie, because nobody would ever suspect a young black woman to be the big slasher movie villain. Or even better, Gale Weathers, her own book, demands a sequel. Why not make it yourself?
That's what reporters do, Dewey. They stage the news.
Not only has Dewey lost trust in Gale, but trust in media in general has gone in the toilet lately. He's not certain she could kill, though, to which Randy retorts that if she's not out doing the killing, she's just another target for the killer. Speaking of targets, her cameraman has been doing some research reading her book and is absolutely horrified to learn that her old cameraman was gutted!
He wasn't gutted. I made that up. His throat was slashed.
Gale, gutted, slashed, the guy ain't in the union no more.
Hey, look on the bright side. If the killer does manage to get you this movie, Gale's gonna ham it up so much that the people will remember you. Being thrown into a pit of chainsaws and piranhas or something.
The story is monumental. Don't you want to be a part of that?
Hey, if I'm gonna be in the paper, I prefer to stay out of the obituaries. But she needs a cameraman, so he needs to stay. Also, Sidney needs to act. Seems despite all this hubbub and murder, life goes on. All these college classes ain't cheap. Sidney is rehearsing for a play and having a little difficulty concentrating. With the fact that one of the main things going on is she is surrounded by masked figures wielding daggers coming for her. Amazing how this isn't the greatest idea right now. So much so that she pushes her boyfriend away. Again. In the meantime, Gale has joined forces with Randy and Dewey to try and figure out who is the killer, or at least who the killer will go for next. There are victims that they might not be thinking of.
There were more victims before the home stretch. Tatum, my cameraman, him...
Time out. See, I don't need to be hearing about no dead cameraman, all right?
Would you give it a rest? It's not that bad. It's not like they took his last few days of work and spliced it together in some goddamn found footage film. So Joel decides to walk conveniently out of frame for a while, just before the voice calls up. Realizing that whoever it is can see them, Gale and Dewey run off in an attempt to find some suspicious-looking motherfucker in a cell phone, while Randy keeps them talking. Eventually it gets to where Randy chastises the voice because following in the footsteps of Billy Loomis, of all people, is fucking pathetic for a serial killer.
You wanna be one of the big boys? Huh? Manson? Bundy? OJ?
Finally, someone important dies. Oh, darn it. Yeah, he's fucking dead. Oh well, while this is going on, Sidney's using one of those gigantic-ass 90s computers in school, so fucking 80s machine, and it freezes up on her.
You have an instant message, that's all. Just hit Alt M.
Sid? Alt M is 2 keys. Really? I don't think I can squeeze that into the schedule. As the cops go looking for them, who should happen to corner Sidney but Cotton Weary? Awkward as ever, despite the soundtrack doing its best to make him seem scary. He's got great news! He's got an interview lined up with Diane Sawyer! An hour of prime time for them to both get their real stories out. But Sidney would rather just forget it. She's all mentally jumbled and just doesn't have the time to help make the world not think that Cotton is a deranged psychopath.
Lovable and fucked up Sidney Prescott, everybody's favorite little victim. Wow. What are you doing? Keep your hand on top of your head.
Raising your voice to someone while the police are actively looking for an aggressor, not the smartest move. Book him, Lou. Story of his life, Cotton is brought in and accused of murder, and having not murdered anyone, yet again, he's getting a bit tired of this crap.
I'm an innocent man, so until you find me standing over a dead body with a knife in my hand, I think you better treat me with the rights and privileges accorded to every innocent citizen in this country.
Well, technically speaking, even if they did find you standing over a dead body with a knife in your hand, the presumption of innocence is still in effect. They'd have to prove in a court of law that you fucking filleted a fella. As such, they let him go and decide it's best to take Sidney into a location so safe, she doesn't even know where it is yet. While this is going on, Joel informs Gale that his van is a crime scene and thus impounded, so he's gonna just say fuck it and leave. She can have his footage, he's not sticking around to get stuck. That means if Gale wants to do anything to stop this, she's gonna need Dewey's help.
Is this just another brilliant Gale Weathers performance?
There are no cameras here. I just want to find this fucker.
To help save Sidney, but even more importantly, Gale is also in the potential victim pool, so let's wrap this up. But how to find them? Well, looky here, we have all this footage, and the killer was always watching, so if they can find someone who shows up at every crime scene, they may just figure out who it is. Rushing back to the university, they find a handy-dandy VCR and begin reviewing the tapes.
You're a money-hungry, fame-seeking, and forgive me for saying mediocre writer.
Hey, at least I'm consistent. No bother, they can forgive and forget, see eye to eye, and mount up, it's time to fuck! Except that Gale realizes that some of the footage isn't hers. Even worse, it's one of those tapes that switches to a live feed just to let you know the killer is in there with you. Thus, they must run! Fleeing from Ghostface, the two of them eventually end up at the university recording studio, soundproofing galore. Oh, that does make it hard for Dewey to get Gale's attention. Giving us one of the few scenes in any movie that is set up in a situation that's supposed to be perfectly silent, and it actually is perfectly silent, not echoed screams or muffled smashing or anything like that, and it's a hell of a lot scarier for it. Gale gazes in grief as Ghostface gruesomely gores the guy, but they can't quite get to her. Oh well, can't win them all. Elsewhere on the campus, Sidney has finished packing and about to leave with a police escort, but before she does, Derek has something to say.
When this is all over, I'll still be here.
Probably sounded a little less ominous in your head. But remember how he gave her his letters? Well, it looks like the fraternities have all gathered around to punish him for this transgression, which effectively translates the two things fraternities are good at, partying and humiliation. Derek's a bit tied up at the moment, but still doing better than Sidney's escort. Seriously, if Dewey just got cut up 2 scenes ago, what chance did Team Miscellaneous have? As the second goes for Ghostface, only to be easily overpowered and get the car stolen by the slasher villain. He tries to threaten the killer with a gun, but that only results in his head being impaled by a pole in a horrifying crash. A crash that knocked Ghostface out. Now, you might think that this would be the perfect opportunity for Sidney and Hallie to just throttle his unconscious ass to death as a team, but let's just slowly and sneakily escape to run away. But Sidney's not running. She believes if she sees who is behind the mask, this will be over. Hallie's not a fan of the idea, but Sidney refuses to let it go. Only one slight problem.
He's gone. What?
The slasher villain teleportation powers strike again! Outside of that, his groggy ass got out of the car, very gently closed the door, and then sprinted the fuck around the city block in all of 12 seconds. Thus, Hallie is stabbed to death, and Sidney runs for her life. Gale, meanwhile, is trying to sneak out of the school, only to literally run into Cotton Weary.
This isn't what it looks like. I found Dewey. I tried to help him.
But it turns out tucking intestines back into place is a lot harder than I thought it would be. Fleeing for her life, Gale screams to the emergency services that Cotton Weary was the killer all along. Only problem is, well, the movie is still going. As Sidney was running for her life, for some reason, she decided the best thing to do was to run all the way back to the college campus where all this killing has been happening and just waltz into the auditorium. The music's on. That seems inviting, I guess. Or like a setup as the spotlight singles her out and the stage sets around her. Well, would you look at that? Derek is here and very happy to see Sidney. She can untie him. But what's this? The killer is also here. Oh? Oh, right. Mickey, the guy, the new character who... Oh, he was in a lot of scenes, just... I never did anything all that important, so my brain just made him invisible. But wait! Mickey says that he and Derek have been working together all along, killing everyone and looking to finish off with Sidney. Derek swears it's not true, and I'm wondering why, if they are working together, he'd want to stop Sidney from untying him, but that's probably because... That was all a bunch of bullshit. Her boyfriend wasn't the killer. He was actually a really sweet guy who loved her with all his heart. You could see all that love going all over the floor right now. Now, I suppose it's important to cover motives at some point, so this at least makes a little sense.
Billy was a sick fuck just like you.
No, Billy was a sick fuck who tried to get away with it. Mickey is a sick fuck who wants to get caught, yeah.
Ah, a homicidal attention whore.
See, I've got my whole defense planned out. I'm gonna blame the movies. It's pretty cool, huh? It hasn't been done before.
Bullshit. Even when this movie was made, there were already several cases where the killers tried to blame the movies. Who could have guessed? Offer a scapegoat to absolve all responsibility, and crazy motherfuckers will go for it. But this ain't Sid's first rodeo with psychotic monologuing, so she attacks Mickey with Derek's letters. But, oh, that's right, these guys tend to work in pairs. Mickey was actually being helped all along by Gale Weathers. Scratch that. Actually, Debbie Salt. Oh, wait, scratch that too.
Billy's mother. Nice twist, huh? Didn't see it coming, did ya?
Well, how the hell were we supposed to when you didn't bother to mention it until just the fuck now? Surprise! There is no Debbie Salt. This is Mrs. Loomis pulling off some Mrs. Voorhees shit, popping up right at the end of Act 3 to reveal herself to be the killer, with the twist being she actually had a role in the movie before that occurred. Seems she and Mickey found each other on the internet. Well, one thing led to another, and they planned this whole killing spree out. But then Mrs. Loomis shoots Mickey, Mickey shoots Gale, and she reveals the super truth. She never cared about this Blame the Movies fantasies in the first place. She just wanted to get back at Sidney. Which she probably could have done about 100 times over by now if she didn't complicate things so much. In that spirit, Sidney gets theatrical on her ass, firing up all the effects. Only to end up in the exact same position with Mrs. Loomis about to murder her. But what's this? Cotton Weary has come to save the day! Ish. He realizes that the so-called Mrs. Salt doesn't really have the media pull that he needs to get his 15 minutes of fame. And he could just kill Sidney as his own personal revenge for this bullshit he's been put through. Or she could reconsider that primetime slot with Diane Sawyer.
Consider it done.
Double kill.
Ooh, gotta watch the collateral damage. But wait! Sidney is alive. Not only that, but Gale is alive. Not only that, but Mickey is alive.
Killjoy.
Alright, change that to pastimes. But Dewey is also alive, and Gale leaves her camera behind, ignoring the scoop to stay by his side. His horribly mutilated, critical condition side. And when the cameras point to Sidney, she shrugs them off, saying that the hero of the hour is none other than Cotton Weary. He's only got one thing to say for the time being, however.
It'll make a hell of a movie.
Or at the very least a decent one. Definitely worth checking out. Anyway, that was Scream 2. It's decent, worth checking out. As I said in the Scream review, the series has a bit of an odd reputation in horror, in that the sequels are generally regarded as good, and at least with Scream 2, it's pretty clear why. The basic setup is about the same, despite following the characters of the previous installment. Said characters have grown, and the situation evolves around them in logically consistent manners. As Randy said, you get more kills with more gore in more creative ways, exactly what you're looking for in a slasher sequel. With that in mind, I think the one thing that I feel is kind of a letdown in Scream 2 is the identity of the killers. It wasn't some mind-blowing twist in the first, more the fact that there were two, but rewatching Scream, it's interesting to see all the little pieces fall into place and the subtle clues left throughout the movie. Scream 2 has a couple clues here and there, but they're pretty minor in comparison, and not nearly as much time is spent musing over who could be the killer. Cotton is propped up as a red herring, better than Sidney's father was, in my opinion, but even then he was never that convincing as a suspect. Mickey was just fucking invisible. They talk about him maybe being the killer a little, but gloss it over quickly, and as I said, besides being the killer, the character just wasn't important to the scenes he was in. Debbie Salt, aka Mrs. Loomis, was a more interesting and noticeable character, and her motivations and true identity were kept completely secret until she showed up with a gun in her hand. Billy might not have revealed that his mom left because of the affair Maureen Prescott was having with his father until the climax, but the pieces of the puzzle were laid out well before that Maureen screwed around and that Mrs. Prescott left. But, aside from my issues with the revelation and twists not being laid out particularly well, they aren't impossible or ridiculous, just not a satisfying answer to any questions one has while watching, or something that helps give earlier scenes deeper meaning other than, hee, they're the killer. And the grand package of Scream 2 still holds most of the same qualities that helped the first movie come together so well: sharp cinematography, believable characters, and that Scream-style slasher situation with the gripping horror of being just a bit more realistically depicted than you typically get in this genre. Coming in at 4 Buffy the Vampire Splatters out of 5. Maybe not as entirely satisfying as the original, but still a goddamn great film in its own right. Thank you all for watching. I've been Shado. And remember, if you want your movie to become a franchise, never, ever...
One more thing. Nice streaks. Wow.